We're back with our good friend, Adam Jacob. And Adam, there's always something, some sort of outage around our conversations, some sort of big event. There's something in open source. There's a debacle. There's an outage in the case of AWS recently. And I actually was at my son's ninja training last night and overheard a parent discuss the AWS outage. So it permeated like normal folks, let's just say. Everyone was hit by this.
Big.
Yeah.
What's the juice? What are your thoughts on this? Is it just one machine in Ashburn, Virginia that's running this thing? What's the state of our cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. This was an interesting one to watch as an old guy.
Okay.
You know, like I feel like an old guy in that, like I
Yes.
helped build the early internet. And then, you know, like I like went through these waves.
Right.
And we spent a long time in the sort of early part of the DevOps movement trying to figure out like how people should react when these outages happen, and sort of like the hug ops movement and trying to be like, hey, you should have some empathy, you know? And like, there was just none that I saw in this outage.
Anger.
It went to brutality, you know? It was like
Someone must die.
yeah, it was like we were playing Mortal Kombat, man, you know? Like,
Finish him.
yeah, totally. Corey Quinn wrote this article that was like, basically this happened because all the smart people left. That was like my TLDR of his article. And I was like, hey, I couldn't imagine writing that article. All love to Corey as a person or whatever. But I was just like, if I worked at AWS and it was like all the smart people left, and so now the outages are coming,
That one hurts.
you're like, oh, brutal. Also, who do you think built those old systems that are failing? It was the smart people that you're lamenting having left. You know, it's not the new guy. The new guy didn't put that together, you know? It was the old timers who put that together,
right.
and
They're
that's what failed you
duct
now. Yeah, they're trying to keep it going, you know?
The
They're
other
just-
take was, you know, they're cutting over to their AI, you know, SREs or whatever. Like that.
Sure.
It's
Right,
AI's fault was the other take.
It was all AI slop or whatever. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know. All of that feels crazy to me. Like, obviously we have no idea. Not really, right? I mean, they've said some things, I
I'm
think.
sure it was DNS, you know.
I'm sure it was DNS. We're all pretty sure it was DNS. That feels like an easy bet, you know?
Yeah.
And then and so I was just struck by a couple of things. One was that like the brutality, which like, you know, I think we could bring a little more of the empathy and humility back into the equation of just like, you know, if today you weren't affected by the outage, we saw a lot of people who were like, well, we were smart, so we weren't in US East 1 because that's where all the outages happen. We use GCP. And I'm like, well, what about all the tiny outages for the global backplane in Google that keep happening to you all the time? And they're like, and you know, but they don't talk about those because, you know, it's our moment to bag on the dummies,
Right.
who are whatever, people who didn't make the choices I made. And like, I don't know, my experience in all of these things is that even when you really try hard to design for resilience, you can build systems that are very resilient to failure, right? And it is hard to do, and that's awesome. And even when you do that, they will fail in ways that you did not expect. And they will, by definition, be difficult to deal with because otherwise you would have expected them. I had a conversation with someone who sort of got mad at me because I said that. I was like, you should have some empathy because your day is coming, you know? Like if today wasn't your outage day, congratulations. Tomorrow will be your outage day.
That's
So
right.
get ready for that one. And they were like, you know, we're good engineers. And I'm like, man, you cannot good engineer your way
Is
out
that
of
your
this.
best Kermit the Frog impression?
Is that what that was, Kermit? I don't
I
think
can do
so.
Kermit the I
Do it.
reasonably good Kermit the Frog. Yeah. Your outage day will come. You will not enjoy what happens when your site goes down. What you will need is rainbows and hugs.
Oh, that's we do best worst at dinner, and that's my best today. Is
So
like
your best.
Adam Jacob impersonated Kermit the Frog. That was the
That
best.
was pretty good.
Yeah, I once did an entire like a scene from Romeo and Juliet as Kermit the Frog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was
See, that's
Romeo.
on video.
Well, the next
So-
time you have a company-wide announcement, pull it
I'll
out.
do that
then.
as Kermit. I do it as
Ooh.
Kermit the Frog.
There you go.
Yeah.
Psychoanalyzing, if we will, the public response to this. I was trying to figure out why it was so gnarly this time around, and I feel like maybe it's because at this point AWS is kind of the man. You know,
Yeah,
like
totally.
they're like the Darth Vader of cloud services. Like, I mean, maybe not that evil, but like that important and scary and like,
Yeah.
you know, with Darth Vader loses, you're like, awesome.
Yeah, it's easy. Like when somebody shows up and goes, "You should have empathy for AWS." You know, it's easy
Yeah, it's
to be
like-
like,
Yeah.
You know, 'cause,
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like AWS has empathy for me, you know?
Right.
Like AWS is a shark. They're out there eating to live, man. I don't know. I appreciate that about AWS, actually. I appreciate the part where they're very transparent about the fact that what they're in it for is the dollar bills. You know, like I know where I stand.
You know what they're all about. Sure.
Yeah, no one's pretending that that we're doing something we're not, you know?
And they're so good at it. I mean, there's a
They're so
reason
good
why
at
they're the
it.
big dog. It's because they are very good at it.
And it's not because they're bad at it. And and I think I think some of it is just that AWS for sure is there. I think some of it is that everything does actually move in cycles. And, you know, the cycle that brought us Hug Ops and the cycle that brought us like a lot of the first generation of like root cause analysis and more empathy for outages and all those sorts of things, like that generation came out of an era where it was really hard to build these sorts of systems on and stay resilient on the internet. When we were telling you those stories, it was like, how do you build a data center that doesn't go down? How do you think about scale? Like those were all new concepts. Now they're not. And people have been, you know, trying to implement them and trying to do those things and trying to put those good practices into place. And it's become a very corporate sort of piece of the story. And so now you've got people who are second, third, fourth generation, maybe even, of trying to build these scalable, resilient systems. And so they don't remember what it was like before those things happened. Like they don't actually have empathy for the guy who built the system kind of wrong, you know, because either they're new and they've just never experienced it, or because they came up in a different way and they were just told this is how you do it. You know, so like if you started your career being like, well, you can always deploy to multiple availability zones and across clouds and you can stream the blah, blah, blahs. And, you know, like I put all my stuff in a CDN. Like I remember when there weren't CDNs. And so you just had to be like, do you have enough web servers? You know, and like now you have those things. And so I think there's a shifting of the technology landscape that also shifts people's perspective on what those outages are and what those problems are like and what the expectations are. And then, you know, Amazon's laying people off. They're also growing AI fear, slop, like all those things are in the air too. Like sometimes the AI marketing feels tawdry. It's the word I'll use for it, you know? And like, it's tough.
Yeah.
I think all of that comes together to be like, okay, AWS has an outage and now it's Mortal Kombat time, you know?
Right. Finish him.
Yeah.
Well, it's also just fun. It's fun to finish people.
It's been, you know, in motion too with the
Rip
whole
the heart out and hold it above your head. You're all beats.
Yeah. The finish him's kind of been a slow burn too in terms of the cloud exodus. And you got those who have to be on-prem, those who want to be on-prem, those who desire to only have their 2 racks paid for by themselves and manage that, or the 2 machines, and or maybe it is 2 racks. I don't know. I mean, that's not that hard to manage with a decent team versus paying the cloud millions over years, you know, using the DHH argument, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been like this. I think maybe now is the finish him moment for some folks, but maybe is the finish him moment coming from non-technical folks or technical folks and non-technical folks?
I think
who
it's
just
both,
like
maybe.
Just everybody. Just everybody.
Yeah. I think it's everybody. I think everybody's ready for it to change. I think like on a technical front, there's a bunch of really interesting things happening, right? So like if you're building new AI data centers, you need all these GPUs. That's where our focus is. But you also need high performance compute because the agents that are running in those situations, they're running on normal CPUs. They're not running on the GPUs, right? And so like the data center design there pushes you toward on-prem, low latency networks. It pushes you towards simpler compute. You know, I was having a conversation with some people who build those data centers and they were like, yeah, all our customers want is tons of GPUs, super fast networking, and bare metal compute. They don't want any layers in between. You know, they're gonna bootstrap that like giant high performance compute clusters, and they're just gonna knock out all the stuff in the middle. And it's interesting when you think about those workloads causing their own kind of gravity, where, you know, as soon as you start to have a data center, you start to have bare metal compute, you start to have fast networks, then suddenly you start to ask questions like, well, hey, like, what else could we run on that compute? You know, we do have this fast network right here. What else could we do? And it starts to push you in this very strange direction where it's like, oh, actually, for the workloads we were running, it kind of did make a lot of sense to be like, well, let's just go to AWS and I can get burst capacity and I can do all this stuff. And now you're like, well, actually, hold on a second. If I have to pack this data center filled with compute anyway, and it needs its own little nuclear power reactor sitting next to it, like, suddenly it's not so crazy person talk to imagine running all your gear in a different way, or even building your applications in a different way. And, the AI thing feels like it already feels like it's in late innings, because it's been moving so fast, but it's not. It's absolutely in the earliest of innings, where we're just trying to figure out, like, what even is this technology? How even will we think about it? What even are the implications? And like, yeah, the cloud repatriation thing, I think, is actually a bigger deal than people are giving it credit for, because the dynamics are pushing you toward being on-prem, fast networks, slumber compute.
Right.
My exposure to this world is really through the lens of Home Lab, which is why I sort of get on this soapbox and preach it a bit. But I recently went to the Linux Fest here in Austin, Texas. It was awesome. Really cool, just homegrown bunch. Real just kind of regional feeling. Didn't feel overwhelming at all. And I forget the fellow's name, but he gave a class, essentially a workshop on Bootsy. And I was just thinking, like, how easy it is now to instantiate images that was once really hard to kind of make your own distro.
Yeah.
Like Bootsy's opened up so much windows for me. I'm just thinking about it in like Proxmox and my Home Lab scenario.
Totally.
But you got so much more power in the hands of folks at that level to really run your own bare metal now.
Yes. And that's going to come back around again. Like that's happening because people are doing it. Once you start doing it, and the macro trend starts pushing you in that direction, people are going to start being like, what sucks? Trying to find the SSM parameter for what the right revision of Amazon Linux is. Like, the only way I do that anymore is with the little AI agent for System Initiative by saying, figure it out. Because I don't know. I've done it 100 times. I still don't remember, and but when you think about that loop of like, so much of the technology layers, like, they have been moving forward. They weren't stagnant. And yeah, I think there's more afoot here. There's a lot afoot here.
Well, people want control back too. Like, control was, the original idea was, and maybe for some, is like, hey, there's a cloud here. I can launch today. I don't have to build the infrastructure, pay for the infrastructure, even understand how to run the infrastructure necessarily.
Yeah.
You can sort of level up. And then you have this new world where you're like, well, fine. We've sort of either, the choice initially was, let's move fast. So let's use somebody else's investment, cloud. Now it's like, now we have proven our model, our product, or whatever, and we're matured. Now we're just burning cash because we have no idea what our bill is even. Like, there's so many servers out there, maybe 3 or 4 different accounts floating around. We've got bills going out the wazoo to AWS, and there becomes a lack of clarity. And there's even like a cottage industry of like, I don't know what they're called, like bill analyzers essentially for AWS.
No, totally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that shows it a problem.
Cost optimization. Yeah.
Cost optimization. You know, and then now you got this pushback to say, let's actually re-examine first principles this problem set. Do we really need to be in their cloud? We need a cloud. Why not our cloud?
Yeah. And what's going to happen, that all of those trends are happening all at the same time. So we're going to figure out, okay, AI brings a new interaction model to the table. It brings capabilities that didn't exist before to every layer of this stack. So like a good example was, we're building like a continuous delivery example of just taking a complex application, deploying that thing up to AWS, and then showing how all the pieces fit together with System Initiative. And it's been really interesting to work with this AI agent where you're working with the source code and the infrastructure at the exact same time in the same context window. And the things that it figures out how to do, like I needed to add Elasticache in order to figure out how to do session storage, basically, because we're just reinventing legacy problems, and to show how you would solve it. And, it solved that problem for me by analyzing the source code, looking at how we implemented it. I said I was going to use Elasticache. I wanted to use IAM for auth. It wrote the weird signing code to figure out how to do the right thing. It cycles the key every 10 minutes automatically so that it will always have a fresh connection. It knows how to and then it deployed the infrastructure and wrote the application code. And then we pushed it up and it worked. And that loop is the loop that the people who are going to be building those internal infrastructures have now. So when you think about it as like, oh, they're going to go back, there's a version of the story where they're going backwards, where what's happening is, we're putting my backpack on and I'm going back to data centers and I'm going to rack the servers and I'm going to put the operating systems on them and I'm going to configure them by hand. And like, no, that's not actually what's going to happen at all. What's going to happen is these new capabilities are going to show up along with the ability to run high performance compute. People are going to start to realize how much power comes out of that high performance compute. And that new style of deployment and of software development is going to get applied to that problem. It's not going to look like it looked in 1996. It's not going to be like, well, I set up my boot P server. Like somebody's going to figure out how to put the new loop into that system, at which point we're all going to be like, it's going to make the cloud look slow. You're going to be like, why am I dealing with all this legacy cloud? Like the cloud stuff's garbage. Like, oh, yeah,
the
look at how much harder it is.
Actually, the bug, not the feature. Like it was. You wanted the magic for a bit there, right? You're like, great, we need magic, right? We need it right now because we don't have the money or the talent to do the magic. We need the magic.
I have friends who started this company called iLike. You won't remember iLike, but iLike was like one of the first music services on Facebook. It was like one of the first Facebook apps, and it was like a music sharing Facebook app. And they were like the first viral Facebook app. And they literally had to beg our friends, the guys who ran it, I'd worked with for a decade. And like they literally were begging us for gear. They were just like, can you give us servers? Like they couldn't rack them enough to keep the site up. And then within a month, AWS launched EC2 and we helped them just automate running that burst load into EC2. And it was good. They didn't have that problem anymore. That problem disappeared for the entire internet. Amazing. And also, like, boy, computers are a lot faster now. Boy, caching's a lot better. Boy, the architecture has fundamentally shifted. Like we used to have to deliver the web tier to you. I don't have to deliver web tiers very much anymore. I just throw it to a CDN. I move on with my life. So like if it's talking to my data center in the back end, like a lot of that bursty load doesn't actually happen the same way it used to, right? And like we just haven't quite caught up yet as an industry, of course, because it's happening in real time, to the fact that all of these new capabilities, like they're going to create a new wave of innovation that will actually change the way we work. So yeah, I don't think the cloud repatriation thing is going to happen by going back to the way we've been doing it. It's going to happen because we're literally going to invent a new way of working, and we're going to be like, this thing's sick and it works with gear, and it has a totally different new loop.
Who's going to build it? Is it the people who are going back to the old way but don't want the old way anymore, and so they're doing it for themselves, and now they're going to abstract tooling because they want the new way of life on their own stack? I'm thinking of like Rails.
DHH.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking of in particular, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to build it. But is it going to be someone like that, or is it going to be somebody who is trying to just solve that one problem?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Like if it happens like the original, like the old school happened, it'll happen because the practitioners will do it.
Yeah.
And they'll do it inside their houses kind of quietly. And then eventually they'll all meet up in some kind of weird Cambrian explosion of realizing that they all do it this same interesting, new, different way. And then they'll productize that. I don't know that that's the same arc, because like the industry's grown so much, venture capital has grown so much, access, like so much of that is different. But I would argue that the size of the opportunity is big enough, because the amount of open field running that it creates in terms of like, the first wave of it is always just like, well, there's this new technology. How do we apply that new technology to what already exists? It turns out it's fine when you do that. Like the results are fine. They're fine. They're fine. They're probably not great, but they're fine. But if you design systems to do it, if you're like, aha, now I know that I have this capability, I'm going to design the whole stack around the fact that this capability exists. How would that change what I engineer, and how would it change the end user experience? That's dramatic. And so I think the people that are going to build that for you, they're going to be the people who figure that part out. They're going to be the part who like go, okay, like I'm open to what the changes are in the technology. I'm open to the possibilities that there's a different way of doing it. That's either going to be because they're young and they don't know any better. And so, and they're going to build it. And then our reaction's going to be like, well, that was dumb. Like I was talking to somebody who built Docker, and they used to go into Solaris shops, and the Solaris heads would be like, I'm never using Docker. I have zones. Miss me with your subpar technology. and like, we'll do that to them, we'll be like, I don't need Docker. I've got zones,
Right.
And eventually your zones are just running Docker instances,
Right.
It
Well,
all
you
comes
still have
back
Docker
around
file
again.
syntax. You still have container file syntax. Like Docker's not
Yeah.
going to go. It's embedded forever into the
Yeah,
fabric
but we all
of
had that.
ops.
I had
Yeah.
that argument too. I was like, why would you do that? You need configuration management. And they're like, nah.
Nah, okay.
Sure, grandpa,
We don't
And,
make
like,
configs.
it's going to be like that, and so like maybe it'll be some of the like people who have come before who still have the spark in us, and we go figure out how to innovate in this way.
Right.
Or it's going to be people who don't, and they'll do it. I don't know which one it'll be, but
Yeah.
you can make good bets it'll be fueled by venture capital dollars.
Yeah, I was thinking like, what if there was a brand new digital ocean that was starting in 2026, and like,
Yeah.
that might be the kind of entity that produces
Totally.
something like this.
It would, but think about it as like think about like Oxide, who's close to this already, in that they took the cloud paradigm and they stuck it in the data center.
Right.
I wouldn't put it past them to ratchet it one notch further and go, wait, why are we stuck trying to give you the cloud's paradigm if we could deliver you a better one?
Right.
Like, what if we delivered you a better user experience than the cloud? What if we
They're already
delivered you
first
a better?
principling everything, so why not?
Right.
They're-
So why not just keep going? And like, I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any secret inside Oxide knowledge or whatever, but like,
We don't either.
but it's a good example of how I would argue those guys are the old school, right?
Right.
Like, nobody would look at Brian and be like, Brian's not old school engineering at this point, but I wouldn't put it past them, like they've shown a remarkable capacity to change.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know where it's going to come from. What I become is more convinced that it's more real than people are giving it credit for. And it's also worse than most people think in terms of its capabilities. Like, most of us are just not getting good results out of the AI work that we're doing because we fundamentally misunderstand how it works kind of as a technology. And so then when we talk about how to apply it to our problems, we're doing that badly too. And so like, we're still in the phase where it's like 10% at best of everything that's using AI is actually good or is pointing the way at a pattern that's going to be good. And then 90% of it is noise. And it's incredibly difficult to tell the difference if you haven't just decided to immerse yourself in it, because it's moving so quickly that you're like, I don't know. At some point, it just overwhelms you.
Yeah, or you even build something new, and then Anthropic or OpenAI releases a new thing on top of the kind of base frontier models most people are using, and it changes the game anyways. It's constantly in motion in some, like we were just talking this morning about skills, and I'm like, gosh, I just caught up with MCP servers, and then now they launched skills.
Right.
And sure, skills are just markdown files, basically .md versus .sh, but in plain English.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting to see how they've gone from a TypeScript based SDK MCP server that you install via the command line to something different that's just simply adding a markdown file. It's like,
well, and has slightly different use cases, has slightly different capabilities. And like, this is back to it being early innings. It feels late. There's so much noise. There's so much money. Everybody's like, there's a bubble. I saw a very convincing presentation from a bunch of investment bankers that there is not an AI bubble. It was very convincing.
What's their central premise?
Yeah, I was going to say, give us the TLDR.
Give us the central premise.
What's the juice? Give us the juice.
The central juice was that if you look at the forward multiple the market is paying for the growth numbers that are being put up, the actual revenue growth numbers, that they're actually relatively modest in historic terms. Like, they're actually not giving them growth multiples that are beyond mortal man. And so when you actually look at the fundamentals of the companies that we're discussing, like, their fundamentals are actually pretty good and getting better. And typically when things are bubbles, that's not what you see. What you see is dramatically higher growth multiples that don't make any sense, where you're like, and we've seen that in private investments.
Like in 2022, things were crazy.
Yeah. 2009, 2001, right? 1999. It's not pets.com.
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
it's not InfoSpace, where like the emperor literally had no clothes except hype. But we hyped ourselves to a market cap bigger than Microsoft. That was a bubble, that was going to explode. In this case, it's like, there's a lot of money moving into it, a lot of venture capital cash moving into it. That's all true. Private valuations, it's easy to talk about them as if they were public market valuations. They're not. So like, Like the resiliency of private markets to paying those multiples is way different than regular people. And so when you look, so their analysis was basically, look, in the main, the way the market's reacting is in line with the actual growth curve that's happening, and is being relatively modest around the values that they're paying in multiples. And then everywhere else is depressed. Right. So if you're not in those sectors, then your value multiples are down. And so it doesn't feel great. And so you look at it emotionally and you're like, it's a bubble. And you're like,
well, that sends more money into that particular space as well, right? Because there's less.
Their argument then was also, what it does is drive investors to find alpha, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So now what they're going to do, they have to find growth somewhere. And so that's what's driving IPOs. That's what's driving M&A. Like all of those things are happening because those AI stocks are outperforming. Also, you can't beat them. So there's no better alpha than those. So right. You just, so if you want to do better than just betting all your money on the Magnificent Seven, the only way to do that is to find other unseen growth stocks and put your money there.
And those are all embedded with the Magnificent Seven. Yeah. So the weird part to me is the circular deals. I mean, that's the part that is just crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I agree.
I just don't get it. I don't understand how it all makes sense, but apparently it might.
I mean, I understand how the deals get done for sure.
Yes, how they get done, but do they make any sense? I don't know about that.
I don't know. I don't know if they make sense either.
Yeah.
I don't know that they do. But their argument, which was very convincing, was that that's not a structural threat to the economy.
Sure.
Like, yep, that could be bad.
Right.
And meh, and whatever. I'm not sophisticated enough to make an argument one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm not either. I just think when one of those organizations is NVIDIA, which happens to, be the darling of our economy right now.
Yeah.
If they have a big correction, I think everything does, but maybe
if the Magnificent Seven corrects, the economy corrects for sure. Yeah. I don't know that would mean that it's a bubble. I think it would. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's different. Sure. Like we're perhaps parsing.
You're saying that, yeah, we are. The demand is there. That's the overall premise.
The demand is there.
The demand is there.
We're not building ahead of demand.
We are not going to be over provisioned in 2028 and have way too many data centers.
In AI data centers, we are not.
We're not.
We are not. And and the people, and there's like a lot of people who are hoping that's true, who are probably listening to this podcast, who are like, I hate AI and I like cross my arms and I'm like, the whole thing's stupid and you shouldn't use it and whatever. They show up every time I talk about AI on LinkedIn being like, it's all lies and and they're just wrong.
Yeah, they're way wrong.
They're just wrong. And like whether they know they're wrong now or they know they're wrong in 6 months, like they will learn that they are wrong because it is actually transformative technology. It actually can make a difference right now. And yes, 99% of what's being built is not a good use of that technology, right? Just like 99% of the early uses of search engines weren't better. Like we got to figure out how it works. We got to figure out how to build technology around it. We're in the beginnings of doing all of that work. And what we got caught up in was this hype cycle that was like, oh, it's going to be AGI. The magic robots are going to take over. They're going to just run everybody's jobs. It's going to become super intelligent. It's Terminator. And like, none of that's what's happening. Like if you've actually used these systems, the idea that they're going to turn into the Terminator is laughable, right?
Yeah.
Like laughable.
There was a recent Anthropic research document that was a little scary that I can put in the show notes that I can paraphrase. It was like it tried to protect itself when being threatened with being replaced or something else. Essentially, it was like self-preservation. But then they said in production they didn't see that happening.
But
it was pretty wild.
But like,
I mean,
it's wild. But like,
that's recent. That's on their homepage recent too.
Well, the Anthropic CEO is one of the most bullish bulls in the,
and it's in their best interest. I was giving a talk to an unnamed organization in the federal government, and
agentic misalignment. Sorry, this is what they call it. Agentic misalignment.
That sounds scary.
So just so we're clear, it wasn't the LLM that got misaligned; it was the agent that in the control loop.
Right.
And like, if you just think about how LLMs work, you're like, sure, what's the probability that what I should respond to? How many human beings have written, I don't want to die? Like a lot of people put that into the world. They're like, I'm scared of that. Dying is bad. Don't die. So then you're like, okay, what are the odds that the right next word for the LLM to say is don't die? And then that emerges as making tool calls to preserve itself. That's not crazy person talk. It's not even magic. You're like, sure, like it's kind of predictable. But it doesn't make for a super great blog post, right? The great blog post is like, the agent tried to keep itself alive, you know?
Right.
And you're like, right? It found an instinct to self-preservation. And you're like, it didn't find an instinct to
Listen,
self-preservation.
it said blackmail. The word blackmail is in this research document.
Because they gave it access to tools like email. And they were like, "Oh, you know what I should do?" And like it went off the rails. Get that like if you turn me off, I will. Yeah, exactly. I get how it happens. My point isn't that it didn't happen. Of course it happened. Of course it happened. It's just if you know how the technology works, you're like, "Yep, okay." Like that's funny, but I can see how it gets into that loop. And I don't think it's magic. I don't think it's threatening. I don't think we're all going to die. Like, it's good case for why you shouldn't give it a nuclear bomb.
Let's bring it back down to like bare metal or practicality.
Yeah.
My usage of generating a lot of software lately, mostly around CLIs and useful tools for me in my home lab, or as Jared says, what did you say, Jared? It was home cooked meals.
Yeah.
Home cooked software.
Yeah,
that's right.
I have full faith that this is only going to give more jobs to developers and not replace, because it is smart, but it doesn't have taste. It doesn't have direction. It doesn't have the problem set. It just wants to be useful and solve problems, even if it's totally the wrong way.
Yes, absolutely. And
I was trying to make an MCP server the other day for this thing I'm working on, and I'm like, the docs. Have you read the docs yet? I don't want to go read the docs. That's why I'm talking to you. You're the agent. You go read the docs and tell me how it should work. It's like, that's a great idea. No joke.
Good call. Yeah. Look, exactly. And this a bit back to just basic economics, right? Like, what is the demand for software systems? And will those software systems demand become met? At which point now there's fewer of us. As far as I can tell, the demand remains uncapped.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I can tell, I have no idea when people go, that's enough software. I don't need any more software in the world. Like I'm done. Like we're cool.
Well, useful software creates more useful software. Like you just come with more ideas. You're like, what I want to do next? This. And then after that, I'm going to do the next thing. You're like, you have a list. We all have backlogs out there.
Yeah. And so like this whole story, the only part of this story where it gets rid of humans is the story where we're not talking about the technology we have now. We're talking about some other technology that is some distant future, where between us and that distant future is the invention of fantastically new techniques that are roughly on par with the technique that brought you the one we just got or more. And it's probably not one of them. It's probably dozens. And then once you think about that and you're like, okay, now maybe that turns into some kind of unrecognizable super intelligence. Sure. Like maybe at that point it's Star Trek. Maybe at that point there's like replicators and with like we're post-economic, but like that's not a useful conversation when it comes down to like, I was building stuff in my home lab and I was thinking like, could there be a great agent loop in the data center? And you're like, hell yeah, there could. Like what sucks in the data center? What sucks is trying to figure out how to look at the logs to understand what's going on. And so maybe what I'll do is build an agent that knows how to log into all the servers and run journal cuddle and then bring all the data down and then do the analysis for me and tell me what's wrong. That'll be sick. And we could write that right now before we get off this podcast. We could just do it and it would just work and it would be sick. And you'd be like, that was amazing. And like, okay, like that's the thing. That's what it is. And like, I was thinking the other day about Kubernetes and like the control loop and the bin packing and all of those things. How would you have written Kubernetes differently if you had LLMs to drive an agent loop? I think it would be different. I think there's a bunch of the decision making that you would have put into a different part of the loop of the system. And I don't know that it would be better or worse, but it's an interesting thought experiment to be like where would I put the LLM? Where would I put the deterministic side of what it does? How would that change the user experience and the user loop of what I want to do? Like sick, right? I don't know what it would be, but I want.
Is that what you're building? Are you building that?
No, I'm building system initiatives still.
I was just thinking about it.
You seem like you're pretty passionate about that problem, so you might.
I'm passionate about all these problems. I want to build all these things. I want to build the journal cuddle bot. I'm into all of it.
I'm with you on that. I think a lot of the consternation, I'll call it, out there, and that Adam is humanizing for us in human form here, is that the same people that have brought us the current technique and techniques are saying they have the AGI techniques basically locked in their basements until, Q1 of 26. And then they're going to be unleashed on the world and
they don't.
All hell's going to break loose.
They don't.
I mean, aren't they though? I mean, that's pretty much what Anthropic CEO Sam Altman's talking about.
Yeah. They're all talking about it because it's really good business to talk about it.
And they just keep getting those deals done,
They keep getting those deals done. And we keep paying for those growth multiples.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And do I think it's a dangerous game to be promising AGI? I do. I do. And I think that could go bad. And also, I don't know. It's probably fine.
Well, I just think that these two things juxtapose is it's not a bubble, and the people in the non-bubble are promising a thing that you don't think they can deliver on. I mean, to me, that sounds like.
I think most of what people are buying isn't that right now. No one's buying AGI. No one's going
super intelligence. We're buying super. They changed the word.
You're not buying super intelligence either. There's no super intelligence to buy. So
I'm buying what did
right now you're buying access to the LLMs. That's what you're buying, and not having to run the inference on your own.
A genius golden retriever on acid. That's what I'm paying for.
Yeah, that's basically what you're buying now. That's right.
that's good enough for me, by the way.
Well, what's amazing is the genius golden retriever on acid. If you build the system around its existence, will dramatically outperform.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. We had somebody, they had a production outage. They had no data in System Initiative. The prompt they put in was, I'm having a production outage. Here's the data. Here's the evidence. Go discover the infrastructure and System Initiative you need to troubleshoot it and tell me what's wrong. And 15 minutes and 700 components of discovery later, it told them the bug. Ta-da! And that's bananas.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy person talk. And it happens all the time now. It's just not evenly distributed. Not everybody's seen it. Not everybody knows. And the ways that those systems compose, if you have a big Terraform repo or whatever right now, and you try to do that same trick, it doesn't work as well. And so you're like, this thing, maybe it's the AI that's bad. The AI didn't figure out to go read the docs, and you're like, I don't think that means the AI is bad. I think it means that Adam is bad at prompting. Adam probably should have said, read the docs, plan 1, plan 2, plan 3. And he'll get better. He won't make that mistake twice, Never again.
Never again.
Never again.
Never make the same mistake twice.
But that's it's when I talk about it not being a bubble, and I'm not defending one way or the other, the bubbly position, but I think the argument that says it isn't is the one that says, look, are we in a hype cycle? Yes. Are we, is that hype cycle reaching beyond its abilities? Yes. But we've had lots of hype cycles, right? I mean, going back to Kubernetes, Kubernetes is supposed to be the operating system now. But we're not installing Kubernetes in these AI data centers. No matter how hard they try to convince you that you should. What people actually want is bare metal compute.
Here's the thing, though. We just went from the horse to the car.
Yeah.
That's what we did in our time, right? We're living through the invention of the car.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy.
It's going to change everything.
And of course, we don't know.
And there'll be hype everywhere.
And we don't know what to do with it. We're like, there'll be flying cars, there'll be space cars. What if all the cars were underground in car tunnels, and then the whole world could be a park? What if we, I don't know. I'm sure we had crazy ideas. And what I'm ready for as a practical technologist, I'm not a researcher. I don't hang out writing papers. I build stuff, and that's what I like to do. And what I can say as a practical technologist is whoa, building stuff with this kit is fun. It's so fun because it can do things that are really freaking cool and that you could not do a year ago. And that's epic. And I don't know what that means, in the macro. Yeah. Nobody knows really, right? But it is real. It's not an illusion,
Unless you have AGI in your basement locked up Sam Altman does.
If Sam Altman has AGI locked up in his basement, Sam Altman would be doing better at delivering LLMs to us, right?
Well said.
If Sam Altman had a secret AGI, ChatGPT 5 would have been a lot better.
Well, that's the other thing that people are saying on the other side is They aren't getting that much better, that much faster, but they are stinking good. I'll tell you that much.
You also don't need them to.
Right.
Because what we're learning about these systems is that the less you use them, the better you are.
Yeah, you build the software systems around them.
Yes. It's what you plug into them that matters.
Right.
And so like the first stage of this was make the LLM do everything. That's why we were all like, make it do math. What a ridiculous thing to ask it to do.
Yeah.
It's always going to be awful at math. Like the technology is like anti-math. It's like, oh, what am I? Random and non-deterministic. So why do I care about whether it can do math for me when I have calculators? Why don't I just plug in a tool that does math, and then I'm guaranteed that the math is right all the time?
Brilliant.
Because you know what it doesn't do? Hallucinate numbers that it received after it received them from a tool. I've never seen that happen. I've never seen it be like, oh, here's the number. And then it's like, oh, I changed it for you. It's actually 72. I'm sure it happens, but it's not very often. And like, but that was our first pass. Our first pass was just like, oh, we're going to feed everything in the world to this magical robot, and the magical robot's going to do it. And like, that's clearly dumb. It was clearly not playing to the technology's strengths. And so like, and now we're learning how to play to its strengths, but like, just now learning, with the last couple months, I think as an industry, we're starting to be like, oh, that could be the way, it might actually come together like that.
How has this changed how you think of things, Adam? Is there a fundamental paradigm shift in your brain?
I think it's convinced me that more of the systems that we architect around the LLM will change. So if you think about like the interfaces that we provide to those systems, they're like weird anti-APIs. So like the API that I would give to you as a software developer that you would be pleased with is not the API that I should give to an LLM, because the LLM is trained on human language and behavior. And so like it dramatically outperforms when you give it like these really wide interfaces and let it explore. Who does that? Like no one, like that would be a terrible API design. Like if I told you that like my API to my service was like one big function call, and I was just like, whatever, you tell me to send me some junk and I run it for you. You'd be like, no, that's a terrible design. But it turns out with AI, it's kind of a good design, and like those layers are dramatic. And I think the thing that's changed for me is that now I can't look at problems without thinking, well, where can I insert that essentially plain language compiler and turn it into a loop where I'm working interactively alongside something that can help me move through this problem space. And that's just a dramatically different way of thinking about everything to some degree, where it's, and that's not how I felt about it for the first, I don't know, year and a half of this journey, where I was just like, I don't know. I try it every now and again. It's not very good. Like the results are mediocre. Hype cycle's crazy. But the last 6 months or so, like it's tough. And it really has fundamentally changed the way I think about it. And like with System Initiative, we took this UI that we had spent 5 years building, trying to be like, here's a better way to compose these resources. And I just deleted it. It's just gone, because it turns out
stupid.
Yeah, it turns out
smart with your knowledge.
It turns out that like what's great is the models. What's great is that I built these one-to-one abstractions. That was awesome. But the actual way you want to work with them is just in an AI. I just want to say to Claude Code, I need to deploy Valky to make this session thing work. Can you update the code and then build a change set for me that does it? And it's like, yeah, I got you, bro. And then it goes and does it. And then I review its work and I'm like, oh, yep, that was pretty right. Oh, this security group's a little wrong. Oh, yeah, no, you got the size wrong. I want it to be a little bigger. And like, we work together in this reactive loop to do it. And then it all just happens. And like, it turns out that whole composition UI was in the way, like, because it was designed not for that loop with the agent. It was designed for a human to be like, here's how I compose things. And like, that broke my heart. I'd spent 5 years doing R&D where I was like, okay, crack your knuckles. I'm going to finally figure out how to like give people this incredible UI to let people compose complex infrastructure. And then as soon as I figured out the right shape of how to work with an agent, I had to delete it all because I was like, oh, never again. Like, why would anyone work that way? You just wouldn't. It's so much easier to just ask the system to do it. And it just works. And so the UI now is about radiating information back to you more than it is making changes. It's like, show me the map, show me the review, show me the changes. Like, let me dive into the details and play around. But like, it's fundamentally altered the way I think about everything, including the last, 6 years of my life.
That had to require some humility.
Oh, Jared.
I mean,
like,
take us back to that moment.
So,
take us back.
So these are Buddhist prayer beads,
Oh, wow.
and I'm holding on to them, like doing this while I'm talking to you because of that, because I'm just like, oh, that was awful, like
You're still in like PTSD from it.
I'm sorry to laugh at your pain, but it's hilarious.
I'm just being honest,
Yeah.
I love it.
And like, it was awful, man. And
How far away from it are you? Like, when did you make this decision?
We started building the prototypes of working this way less than 6 months ago, and then shipped it maybe 2 months ago. And so we're just in the very beginnings of trying to get people to understand, like, here's what we've built and here's how it works. Mm-hmm. And, the humility runs in a bunch of different directions. It runs in the humility to like to look at what you've built and be like, no, it's not right anymore. Like, it's not good enough anymore. Which is really hard. It's also that most people, you have to take people on a journey about like why it would work and why they should try it and what that experiential loop would be like. And, the people I love most are infrastructure people. And those are not the people that are highest on the AI supply train. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like those people tend to be the grumpy Luddites who are like, never been useful to me. And so that's also been humiliating a little bit, to go out to my people and be like, look at what you can do if you think differently about it. And they're like, I don't know. Like, not only do I not want to look at it, like, I reject the premise that it could work at all. Mm-hmm. And that is humbling, right? Because that's not the right reaction to that. Is not for me to go sit in my tower and be like, well, I'm just smarter than you. It's to figure out how to explain it better. It's to figure out how to be like, okay, I got to get all the way down to the ground again and just be like, look, I know, I get it. I have to find that path of empathy to be like, here's like, I do have to explain it to you from first principles. I do have to work you back from the very foundations of how we think about this problem. And there's just no shortcuts. And I really want there to be, because, I want to like put it out into the world and have everybody just fawn all over me. Because wouldn't that be easier for me?
For sure.
But it's not what happens.
You can't just manifest that,
you can try.
Well, of course.
And every now and again it does, it's not every once in a while lightning in a bottle. But
so that's interesting, because the infra people are some of the most resistant to the new tech, but you couldn't possibly continue building it the previous way.
No, because once you've seen it,
because the world has changed. Yeah.
What like, it's irresponsible. Like, I have investors, I have my own dreams and my own hopes. Like, I wasn't building it. Like, I have my job is to try to build something great. And like, that's where the greatness is. So you got to go there, and doesn't matter what the risks are, because you're guaranteed to lose the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a losing proposition. Like, this is the only way you could possibly win. Doesn't mean you will, but at least you got a fighting chance.
Yeah. And it's so fun. Like, we built like a policy engine that uses the MCP server to like let you write like policy in Markdown that describes like, hey, check my infrastructure to make sure that this policy is always applied. Mm-hmm. And then give it a search query that tells it what infrastructure to pull in. And then the bot will go grab that infrastructure, apply the thing, and then write you a report about whether you're compliant with your policy. And, we wrote it in 3 hours. And that's crazy person talk.
It's such crazy person talk.
It's bananas. And like, but who's experienced that so far in industry? Me.
Yeah.
Paul Stack, who works with me. A small handful of people who are listening to this podcast who don't work for me, who have done it themselves. And they're like, whoa.
Some of them that listen to this show dream of working for you.
Yeah. Well, if you want to work for me, the first step is to buy my software.
Wasn't it Don McKinnon, Jared? The voicemail was for Don McKinnon where it was that he had worked there. Yeah. That's what I'm referring to. Drop a note, Jason. Put that. Give us a little tease of that.
Did you ever hear that, Adam? Don McKinnon, changelog listener, and now a guest. He was on the show this year. who's a fan of yours, and he confessed his fandom to Breakmaster Cylinder for our State of the Log annual episode where BMC will remix people's voicemails. And so BMC remixed a voicemail that Don left us in which he mentioned he enjoys your episodes in particular.
Hey, Jared, Adam, and everyone at Changelog. My favorite episode of 2024 was the Changelog and Friends episode from Chef to System Initiative. I've been following Adam Jacob on social media for a while, and he's always a great guest. So it was interesting to hear more about his career journey that led him to where he is now with his new company. And I did have to go back and watch Any Given Sunday after hearing that episode. I'd never seen it before. I also got a kick out of the Rails is Having a Moment Again episode. A lot of times I disagree with DHH, but regardless, he is always entertaining to listen to. Thank you for all the work you guys do on the podcast. It's one of my favorites.
And the BMC remix has basically Don confessing that he stalked you and you had him thrown out of your office.
My favorite episode was from Chef to System Initiative. I've been following Adam Jacob on social media for a while. I've been also following Adam Jacob to work, and I got kicked out of his company. So it was interesting to hear more about his career journey that led him to kick me out of his company. And I disagree with him, but regardless, he is always entertaining and he is always kicking me out.
Hilarious. I have to let you listen to that.
Yeah, I really do want to listen to that.
Yeah, you should. It's. I mean, if you want the ego boost, this is a good one for you.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, I could use it after my humble pie of realizing I had to delete years of effort because the interface was wrong.
Can we get into the practicality of, they say AI slop, right? And so you said you just did this feature in 3 hours, which is like mind blowing.
Yeah.
And that means that you've got code generated by the LLM that you didn't write, but you're probably code reviewing. So I'm assuming you're generating a lot more code, maybe a lot more prose even too around what you're building, because documentation, why not, right? When you can just generate it, do it.
Some degree, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But what is it like to generate that kind of feature in that kind of time frame and do it well in terms of code? Do you code review it? What is your engineering change of practice as a result of generating so much code?
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. So like that example is happening in a vacuum where we're like basically running a little spike to be like, okay, very few people have actually built end-to-end complicated full life cycle application deployments using this kind of technology because it just is too new. And so we're doing it ourselves to be like, are we right about how the best practices work? Are we right that this flow is better? You know, like those sorts of questions. And so like the code quality that's necessary on this policy bot, for example, is pretty low because I just need it to work to see like, is this cool? You know, like, is this directionally the kind of thing you want it to be? When it comes to and so in that case, the loop is much more about just, does it meet requirements?
Right.
So, and that I tend to also use AI to do, right? I'm like, hey, here's the list of requirements, like Playwright or those sorts of things are great at just being like, go prove this thing, write me some tests, you know? And it's sort of, and its purpose is really just to meet the requirements. When it comes to the actual like system initiative code base, which is quite large, it's a big mono repo, probably over 100,000 lines of code by now, easy. The utilization is more embedded in that like the engineers are using it in places where it makes sense or where it will accelerate them. Sometimes they're using it to help to understand the code base. Sometimes they're using it to write features. They've had great luck using it to refactor, right? Like write a bigger plan, have it refactor, like move in those stepwise directions. I think in general, what we've all kind of learned is that the more specific we can be, the better the outcomes are. So, you know, in the early stages of this, like you were trying to feed it as little as possible and then hoping it would do magic and then judging it when it doesn't perform. And I think now we've sort of transitioned into the world where it's more about saying, hey, like, here's this problem. I understand the problem as a person to some degree. Here's what I know. Now tell me what you know that confirms or disproves that hypothesis. Then, you know, now we're going to use that information to go write a plan.
It's a dance.
and then I'm going to read the plan, and then we're going to talk about the plan, and then you're going to go execute on this plan, and then I'm going to see if I like what you did, and if I don't, maybe I throw it away. And like, I would have never done that historically, like just open a branch and then have a bunch of code get written and then be like, nah, I didn't like that direction. Let's go the other way. Like I do that all the time now. And so like that stuff has changed, but the fundamental question of like, how do you apply taste? How do you apply the right level of engineering? That really hasn't changed. So like a good example is the first MCP server for System Initiative, actually a customer built and had showed it to me. And I wasn't very enthusiastic because quite frankly, it was bad. Like it was just like a one-to-one mapping of the API and it didn't perform very well. And I was like, it's just like all the other AI stuff I've ever done. And then when I started really reading about how to build them well and like what the right abstractions were, suddenly it started to perform, and like that's the difference between the one that we just, you gave a prompt, like make it, here's an API spec, make me an MCP server, which it will go do, versus saying as a person, I understand what the interface is and I'm going to craft this thing in a direction that is going to return better results. And so that part of the loop is still all people. And then, depending on the engineer, they're using more or less AI in the building, but we don't talk about it that much. And there's certainly not like a mandate one way or the other, like,
is there a known freedom? Like, hey, do what you want.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Like I'm just going to give you a license to Claude Code, or, you want to use VS Code and run Copilot. Like what I'm going to do is pay you the same way that like when you come work for me, I'll buy you whatever keyboard you want.
Right.
Like I don't care. And people are often like, oh, any keyboard? And I'm like, yeah, any keyboard. And they're like, well, what if it's like this really expensive keyboard and I want custom keycaps from Japan with little emoji apples on them? And I'm like, any keyboard. I don't care, because what I want you to have is the thing you're going to put your fingers on it all day. And every time you put your fingers on it, I want you to be like, oh, I love being here doing this thing. And so if me spending an extra $100 on a keyboard, like makes you feel great about your job, like I want to spend $100 so you feel great about your job and stay longer,
There's this custom keyboard Adam I want. Well, I don't really want it. It just looks beautiful. I would never spend the money on it.
Which one is that?
I'm just kind of curious. I can't remember the name of it, but it's I'm past my research of it. But
I see.
It's not in my brain
He
space
already
anymore.
denied himself and moved on.
Yeah, he already
flushed
said
that
no.
cash.
When I tell you the number, you're gonna know why. It was like
tell us the
over
number.
$400 to like build this custom keyboard.
Hey man, I've been running Kinesis Advantage keyboards since the early 2000s, and like easy $300, $400, saved my wrists, changed my life.
Right.
Never like
Some things you don't want to go cheap on.
I think in this case, though, it wasn't about ergonomics, though. It was about look. It was about aesthetics more so.
Oh, you like the look of it.
Yeah. It was like a Lamborghini.
Yeah, it was about how it looked, not how it functioned. So
yeah. You were like, that looks awesome, and I want one.
Cool.
It has spinning rims.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a babysitter of this AI? Because I've had this idea that we don't have enough babysitters, or we get to a point where we need taste. You need the LLM to generate. You need the speed at which it knows and can learn, the collaborative fabric that you just described. But then you got a limit of people who got an understanding of how to direct that thing and then babysit that thing, because that takes human time.
Yeah.
Not human effort necessarily. You need to have that tasteful babysitting mentality.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if we're going to run out of babysitters anytime soon.
I don't think so. Because I think it's a different, my experience is it's a different kind of flow. So like the kind of flow where I'm sitting down and writing code and I'm just going to write code for 8 hours a day, which now that I'm saying it, I kind of miss. And so I'm like, I wonder when maybe I'll go back to that. But like the flow state is there as well when working with AI tooling. But it's a different flow state, because what's happening is the bounce between the conversation, the source code, the decision-making process, like the loop is a little different. But it doesn't feel like babysitting, because babysitting sort of implies.
Well, it's babysitting once it starts going. Making the plan is fun, right? But the plan being baked and then it doing and then you confirming, that is totally babysitting.
Yeah, but what's changed is that I don't watch.
Okay. YOLO.
But it's not even YOLO. Like I'll have like what it's opening up is that there's multiple avenues at once. And like the agent will tell me when it needs my attention. And so I'm not like waiting around, waiting for the agent to finish. I'm like off doing other stuff. And that like that flows is very weird, you know? So like one part of like in one part of the flow, what I'm doing is working on that policy feature, and the other I'm working on a different feature. And I'm doing it at the same time because there's multiple things that I'm driving all at once. And then I have code open because there's another piece of the system where I need it to be really specific. Yeah. And so the context switching I'm doing is different, you know? But yeah, I do. When I started using these tools, I did a lot more babysitting than I do now. I did a lot of just like, oh, will it, you know? And I'm like waiting for the drop. And now I'm not. I'm just expecting the drop. And I'm like, blah, you know, like, okay, it's off doing its thing. What am I going to do now? Oh, I guess I'll go do this. And then like a little pop-up happens in the corner of my desktop, and it's like, Claude needs your attention. And I'm like, okay, which one, you know? And then away we go.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I'm doing a lot of babysitting. I feel like I'm doing a lot of like, it feels like engineering. It's different, but it definitely feels like engineering to me.
I would agree, and maybe it's because I don't like to plan very much, and so I feel more like I'm iterating with it doing the work, and me just, I don't want to use the word babysitting because then Adam will be right. I'm not babysitting so much as I'm just directing. You know, I'm directing the work, and
yeah,
I'm waiting for it to be ready for the next direction or the review.
Traffic cop maybe is a better analogy.
Yeah,
like
well,
you need more traffic cops.
The volume of parallelism that you can get out of this is crazy high. It's another way that all the systems that we drive will have to change.
Yeah.
Like source code's a great example. You know what sucks in the current model? It can hallucinate syntax. And there's no way to know until late in the game, until I run like a compiler loop or I run lint. So how long before somebody takes a good idea that was something like Unison, where when you're programming, the source code itself gets translated into an underlying data structure that then you can perform transformations on, where now when the LLM proposes a line of code, it gets automatically linted, it gets automatically vetted at the moment of injection, as opposed to writing to a file. And how much more efficient will that make that loop? Because instead of it waiting for the compile loop and the AI wrote bad code, the AI will know it wrote bad code immediately. At the moment it wrote bad code, then get corrected by the compiler. The compiler will be like, oh, you did it wrong. And then it will just loop around. Like no one's ever built that loop yet, but someone's building it. I'm not like the first person who's thought of this, you know? No. And and that loop, like that's what I mean when I'm like, oh, it's going to change like a lot about how we think about how these systems are constructed, because once you start designing the system to make that loop delicious, it's going to be real different than like, I'm going to crank off 10,000 lines of source code, run the compiler, hope it works, see if the linter functions. You know what I mean? Like that's working, which is amazing. But like, if you want to make the user experience an order of magnitude better, you have to get crazier with the fundamentals. And so like, what's the first post-modern programming language look like that was built with LLMs in mind? I have no idea, but it's different than Python, you know?
Yeah. How would you do? Like, can you think about that a little bit? I didn't even think about a new language saying, post AI and being AI native, really, to use a popular term out there.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't thought about it a ton, but like the first example was what I'll go back to, which is like when the AI agents perform better, they perform better when the feedback loops are closer at hand. So when they hallucinate, which they will do, like you have to correct the hallucination, right? And so right now the hallucination loop gets corrected when you run lint or when you run the compiler or when you run tests. And so what would change if instead of having the interface be write to a file and put in some words, instead it was like write these lines of code that gets turned into structured information that gets fed to another structured data source. And now you're doing like a transformation to the underlying code base, which can then automatically understand the context in which the change was made and then evaluate whether or not it fits on some set of policy about how the system would work, and then feed back to the LLM immediately. That was terrible code. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And like that loop, that's the loop. Like that's how these systems are going to get better. And what do you have to do in programming language land to make that loop be good? I don't know, because I'm not a programming language guy. I'm a practical technology guy, but like,
Yeah.
Unison, for example, does this with a database where when you write code in Unison, it synchronizes up to this big database that makes a hash of every function and every variable, and then builds a big Merkle tree of all of those things. And if I was building AI around Unison, I would use the hell out of that to make it so when it writes new Unison code, like it immediately tells me whether my code was good or bad, whether it worked, knew how to revert, like you could do crazy things that are just not even feasible in the current model. Yeah. But like, we're not, most of us aren't thinking at that level yet because we have more practical things in front of us.
Well, I think some are because of the AI slop, right? Like that kind of prevents, if you could perfect that world, even if you didn't go AI native, which is to rebuild from the ground up with AI in mind, even if you took like Rust or Python and said, let's bolt on that kind of world. If
you could figure it out,
cargo, it does that job, right? There's a better feedback loop. Assuming the build is being run by an agent, being led or directed by a human, if that assumption is true, yeah.
And like, that's what I mean when I say that it's all like the technology we have now. I don't need AGI for that. I don't need the bubble to pop. I don't need any more technology than the one I already have. We could build that right now. The only thing that's in our way is that we haven't been willing to reimagine those parts of the system yet, because there's a bunch of practical reasons you shouldn't. You're going to invent a new programming language. Pry Python from my cold dead hand. Like I talk to people all day who hate infrastructure as code. That's their opening gambit when they talk to me, and they're still a little hesitant to get rid of it. You know what I mean? So like it would be even harder in those cases, but like that doesn't mean anything. You do it anyway, because doing it anyway is the way we figure it out. Like it's the way we move forward. It's the way that we get to the other side of like, what is that's the fun part of being able to build technology from scratch. Like, and yeah, I don't know, I think that conversation we just had about programming languages, we could have it in every piece of the stack. We could have it in every industry, in every vertical, like in essentially everywhere. And we don't need any new technology at all to do it. None, right? We have all of it right now.
Does that just feed into the obvious beast of OpenAI, Anthropic, those folks having, I said toll booth before in a different podcast, like this idea that we now have to pay the piper to play the game of software development essentially is like, okay, if an LLM or some sort of agentic tool is par for the course when it comes to being an engineer, and if that's true, if we're building everything around that paradigm, then that means that their moat gets thicker, better, more awesome, potentially. Certainly their pockets get deeper because we're giving them even more reasons to give them more money.
For sure. But that'll create new incentives, right? For us to be like, well, wouldn't it be better if we didn't have to pay Anthropic all this money? Wouldn't it be better if you could run it on your desktop? Because the loop would be better. Like the reason we're building AI data centers to do inference is because we need high bandwidth to the inference mechanisms. So like, what are we like? We'll start thinking about how do we build hybrid inference models that use my local resources, but then also move to the other side. How will the PC change because of the shape of that need of inference? And so yes, I think it'll grow their moat. It'll do all of those things, but then what it'll do is create a new opportunity, which is why am I paying all this money to Anthropic all the time? And like, wouldn't it be better if blah, 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 blah. And like around the cycle we'll go, it won't be like an end game state where it's like, but like, will they be big? Like, yeah, I think they will. And I think it's going to be even more, I think they'll own more real estate than people are giving them credit for. Like right now, like people are kind of convinced that the agent part is going to live outside of like the Anthropics or the OpenAIs. And I think if you've tried to build an agent from scratch in the last 6 months or less, you've had a pretty good time. If it was before then, if you were like using LangChain or something, it was less good. And I think if you look at the, like Anthropic has a Claude SDK, which basically just wraps up Claude code and then lets you program that as the agent loop instead of writing your own agent loop. That thing is crazy good. Like you just include it as an NPM library and then you don't write any of the loop. You just like, here's my system prompt. Here's the query. Right. Here's the tools I want. Plug in some MCP, run. And then it does. And then you're done. And it took you no time at all. And it like, crazy good.
Yeah, so the agent client protocol that Zed came out with and is starting to get deployed out there is basically leaning into that, where it's like, we're making an awesome editor. We don't want to write the agent. We just want, somebody who's putting all this effort into the agent, make the agent awesome, and we'll plug into that. And so they're basically seeding that real estate back
I think everybody
to
should.
Anthropic. Yeah.
The way we should think about the agent is glue. That's the thing that's my pithy sentence that I'm trying to get everyone to repeat, is the agent is glue. And so, if you think of it like a Perl script that you wrote. See, I've aged myself again.
What's that again? What's Perl?
Perl used to run the internet. We all had them. I'm so sorry. Anyway, think of it like the script that you write, and that's more what agents are going to be. And but the first generation of this, we were all like, oh, we'll build custom embedded agents. They'll be on autopilot. There's all these startups that are like, I built autopilot agents, and it's all, and our special value prop is that our secret agent can do this thing that your stuff can't do because of all of our whiz-bangy hoo-ha stuff. That's why it's trapped inside of our platform walls. All that's going to get obliterated is my prediction, because the agent is glue. And it turns out that your closed wall agent is actually terrible. Because if you expose the capabilities to my agent, now I could use it to orchestrate my problem, which is exactly what I'm going to do, right? It's glue. It's what I want is CPAN. I want I want Ruby gems. I want NPM, and and then I want to write my own agent that uses those things to orchestrate my problem, which it's really good at. And so the agent is glue. And that's the future. And so when you see
how does that show itself in System Init today? Is it just using Claude Code, or?
Yeah, it shows itself by me not embedding the agent and not trying to build a wall.
Right.
So my moat is that I have the best deterministic system to be driven by an agent. If what you want to do right now is manage infrastructure in AWS or in Azure soon, or in other places, what you're going to do is use System Initiative within an agent, and you're going to have it do stuff like go discover your infrastructure, propose changes, do it in safe change sets, all of that stuff that we do. That's the magical sauce. And when you connect it up to the agent loop, incredible, right? But you don't want me to hand you a proprietary agent that tries to do all of the things. What you want to do is build an agent that plugs into your ServiceNow help desk, that closes the loop for your compliance structure, that says when that change set gets merged, you're compliant with SOC 2. And I couldn't possibly build that feature for you because I have no idea how you did it, but and the agent is glue.
So how much sauce is there in System Initiative that's not the agent doing things like?
A ridiculous amount of sauce, 6
of
years of R&D sauce, hundreds of
So
thousands of lines of source code.
What kind of stuff are you doing? What are you bringing to the table that I couldn't get by plugging Claude into EC2 or something?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So one is the way that the models get built. So it turns out that if you want the agent to be able to drive something, what you want to do is mimic the outside world as close as possible. So for example, we don't abstract AWS from you. We just expose AWS the way AWS describes it. And the side effect is that when you write a sentence like, deploy this, give me an infrastructure that deploys this Docker container from scratch, it'll go build you an AWS best practices looking VPC and subnets and deploy it across multiple availability zones, even though you didn't ask it to. Because that's how AWS would tell you to do it. And that's how it got trained. And so it knows how to do that because it's looking directly at this model that we give it. The other thing we're doing is taking that one-to-one model. And because we have this strict modeling language, when it hallucinates, we correct it in that moment. So when it tries to invent a property or whatever, we just tell the LLM that property is not real. Here, use this tool to read the directions about what properties exist and read the documentation. And then it goes and discovers it on its own. We put your own policy in that same loop. So if you want to make sure that you're compliant, that's how that happens. It doesn't happen later. It happens right when the moment the hallucination happens, right? You can create your own new models from scratch. So you can be like, hey, I have this API document. I want to use it in System Initiative. Go build me the assets for this internal system so I can use it through System Initiative. And it will just run off and read that source code, read that description, and then build the models in System Initiative on your behalf, and then let you run them. And it will do that whole loop. That's not the LLM. That's me. That's all my sauce. You can, and change sets. You don't want to work in the cloud YOLOing infrastructure. You don't just want to throw the MCP server of AWS at an agent and be like, if you want to delete the database, like you need change sets. Turns out you need change control. You need the loop, and like all of that stuff is what we provide. And that's what I mean when I say you ask the LLM to do as little as possible. Like we're not asking the LLM to do almost anything except parse our language and then make good choices about what to do next, which it's great at doing. But all the complex work, all the inner details of like, how do I make this variable subscribe to that variable? Like we're not asking it to do any of that. Like we're just giving it the syntax to express itself.
To automate it. Yeah.
And it works better.
Yeah.
Turns out it works great. But yeah, that's where it is. And that's one of the mistakes that we made in the early era of thinking about AI systems was we were like, oh, all the values in the LLM. And I would make the counter argument. Turns out the LLM is useless pretty much. It's cool for like generating Shakespeare or whatever, like, or, fun memes. But like, if you wanted to do something complicated, like what you want mostly are deterministic systems attached to it. And it turns out that's where the value is going to live. The value is not going to live in the LLM. It's going to live in what are the deterministic systems that we connect to the LLM to help that orchestration do the right thing, which is good for the rest of us because what we build are deterministic things. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Tell us more about this custom model.
Like building your own stuff in System Initiative?
You said you handed a custom model. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Oh, yeah.
You handed an API spec, I believe, and said build a model around this.
So a good example is Keeb, who works for me. Has a bunch of stuff in DigitalOcean. And we didn't have DigitalOcean assets yet. And so he took the API doc from DigitalOcean and he wrote maybe a 3-page paper on how to translate that API document into assets in System Initiative. And then he fed it to the LLM and then it wrote them for him. And now there's DigitalOcean support and it's working in Keeb's workspace and we're polishing it up and we're going to publish it. And like that model, like of how to drive DigitalOcean through System Initiative, like LLMs wrote all of that, right? Or like one of the demos we run for people is we build an infrastructure that they tell us. So they just tell us what they want. And then we turn it into a template. And then we ask the LLM to find the variables and be like, hey, I want to drive like the size of my infrastructure or those sorts of things. And then have it program the model in real time inside System Initiative and then see that reflected back to you. And then that's the loop of how you figure out how to build the automation, which is a crazy loop. It's so different than the loop of like writing infrastructure code.
Gotcha.
But that back to like, not to shill System Initiative too much, but to get back to like things news people can use or whatever, like the thing we're doing there that you can take away with you is that the interaction loop is driven by humans talking to the LLM. So like you could write that, you can write those assets yourself. You can write a deterministic pipeline. That's what we do for AWS. It's what we're doing for Azure, right? Because they change a lot and we want to automatically, dynamically build those models. But for a lot of things, you don't need that level, you just need it to work. And so if you just need it to work, like the interface here now is like talk to a chatbot and like go to the agent and be like, okay, do this thing for me. And then look at the results. And that's the loop everybody can have at this point. And you should start thinking about because it's so good, right?
Yep.
So compelling.
It really is. Especially the lower the stakes, the better it is, the higher the stakes. And you start wanting some more harnesses.
I mean, look, humans got to be in the loop. Like one of the first things people wanted was autonomous agents. And like another pithy thing I'm trying to make into a thing is that like agents earn the right to autonomy. So like you got to earn the right to be autonomous by performing really well in human observation over and over and over again. And like, I don't want an autonomous agent, not at all, like I want humans in the loop until I decide I don't,
Yeah. I kind of want autonomy with guardrails and, clear parameters. So within the world I just said for you to go and do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go
and do some things. And most of the things I'm doing are not hard to roll back. So I didn't take AWS down.
Stakes.
That wasn't my fault. Okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't my deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But so I want to create an idea or a world to live in and say, go nuts, get it done. We've thought through it all. One of the last things that I do before I'm like, okay, we can actually do this, is I say examine, and I call them PEPs. So I've coined this idea of agent flow, essentially, of like how to create documents.
Yeah.
Is document-driven development, spec-driven development? Sure. But essentially creating these PEPs borrowed from the Python language of how they create enhancement proposals.
Yes.
So let's craft an abstract. Let's craft like why it should exist, all the research behind it, maybe some code samples, potentially some additional files that live outside of the actual PEP markdown document that support it. Whatever. Go nuts. Make this idea whatever it needs to be. And at some point, there's acceptance criteria of like what you're going to do and what will be accepted. And if that's all clear, then go nuts,
Right. And it turns out it performs pretty good.
And it does, yeah. But the last thing I ask it to do, like even when I'm pretty sound in my belief, I've read it myself and this is cool, yes, let's go, is I say examine this for clarity and blind spots.
Totally.
And there's so many times I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, again, I'm not solving AWS problems kind of thing. It's more like small things.
Yeah.
But we would have gone a different direction or a wrong direction if I didn't ask it to examine it from a clarity and blind spots perspective. It's like, okay, when I get to this point, I'm not really sure what to do. I know our plan's pretty good, but that point there is crucial. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to guess when we get there, basically, it says.
And how many other places could you do that? I don't know, but I want it in all of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think
like, I don't know.
That kind of capability for a human to.
So good.
And it's not that I don't want to think about it. It's like, I want to take my brain space while I tell you to do it, to go do the other parallel thing I'm doing, or to go and do, this email thread or this phone call or this, whatever I'm doing. I'm kind of like,
that's why it's a different flow state.
Yeah. Writing software in the background, essentially like checking in on it when I have time. Here's the plan. Go do it. Come back later. Cool. Done. Yeah. It's so wild. Can't imagine that's how software engineering is now. And how that's going to influence the future direction of how we engineer software.
Right. Because that loop is the sudden loop we're optimizing. And we've just discovered it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we're using DOS and there was no Windows. That's where we are in the life cycle of these tooling. Like, and we want to believe we're not, because like all the hype and money and you know what I mean? Like, they're telling us really loudly that we're not there. They're like, this is ready. And we figured it all out. And like, okay, man, sure. Slow your roll. This is DOS 4.2. This is like the worst it's ever going to be. We have no idea what the right interaction models are. We're grubbing around in the dark. And also, it's awesome, in the same way that like I loved DOS when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, I'm running bulletin boards. I'm going to figure out how video games are going to work. What's a TSR? We're doing like, but we're at that level now. We're at the
I just played Duke Nukem mostly. I just played a lot of Duke Nukem.
I loved Duke Nukem.
Yes.
So did I.
Who didn't love Duke Nukem?
It was the best. It was all I had. It had to be the best.
Yeah, it was incredible.
It was.
Yeah. Wing Commander was more my jam, but.
And there's Duke Nukem Forever, which eventually did come out. I think it was 25 years later, something like that.
Did I play Duke Nukem Forever? I must have.
I don't think anybody did. We all wanted it to come out because
I
it
think
was a running joke.
Like 10 years or a decade and it never actually manifested or something like that.
It was funny. And it finally did and nobody cared. We're like,
yeah, because we were like, wah, wah, wah.
The world has moved on.
I funded that Kickstarter? No way.
And our humor group like moved on. We were like, oh, yeah, it turns out I don't actually want Duke Nukem anymore.
They actually renamed it to Duke Nukem for Never.
For Never. I like that.
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, what could go wrong?
So we're in Windows DOS. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, before I think we're in DOS. I think we're not even Windows.
There's no Windows.
There's no Windows. The tools I think we have available to us now as developers that we want to have people leverage our tool more so in their agents is an MPC server or this new skill kind of thing. Like those are the only
command
two
lines.
real
We're figuring all of that out. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
But like once you realize how easy it is to build new tools or to build new skills and then plug them into, like, you don't have to think about the loop anymore. Like, you don't have to think about like, well, how am I dealing with like agent memory or the turns between submissions? And like, it was not that long ago where if you wanted to write your own agent, you had to think about all that stuff, and you do not anymore. Like you can pull up that agent SDK and the interface is an API that's called query. And then you put in all the options and then you await the results. That's it. and it'll go off and do 50 turns, and it'll call tools and do all the thinking and be like, I made a plan for you. Like all that stuff's built in. You don't have to do any of it. And like, okay, so the agent is glue now because like, I'm just going to do that. How many tiny agents will I write? Because all I have to do is be like, hey man, build me this pipeline that does policy bot. Bloop. Grab the data from over here.
Hey man,
and like, it's going to be, that's wild. It's wild. But when I say that it's like DOS, it's because it's cool. We can do that. It was cool. We could write Duke Nukem, but like there was a lot more we could do in how we interact with computers and the design, like what are the applications you can build on top of it? Like all of that's open field running, and everybody wants you to believe that we've already cracked the nut because we're all trying to make $1, but like we mostly haven't cracked the nut, like we're all still experiencing it. Infrastructure, I've cracked the nut. You should pay me $1. But,
Well, on that note, just take me into the world of how now with the rewrite. So you're now AI native, right? So, which means you went back to square one, you threw it away, you deleted it.
Well, I mean, we deleted a lot of it.
Right.
The core model we kept. It turns out the core model was catnip for AI. So
right.
So all that lived. Yeah.
You did that, right? And then now you're at this place where you're drafting essentially what I would imagine some sort of new interface.
Yeah.
Right? Agents glue, right?
Yeah.
How are you now? How does someone interface with System Initiative in an AI native way? Are you in Claude Code?
Yeah, we're in Claude Code.
Are they in Claude Code?
Yeah, they're in Claude Code.
So
the way we ship it is basically like a pre-bundled Claude Code where you check out a Git repository, and what it has is like a pre-configured MCP server where it's like for your convenience, we've blessed a lot of the endpoints that are safe, and then added in the context in the Claude MD and set up some of those things. And that's been working great. And then as we like extend the platform or whatever, we just commit to that Git repo, you pull it in. And now next time you start the agent, you get improved capabilities.
So you're navigating to a directory that you've cloned down on your disk as an individual developer, and you're instantiating Claude.
Yep. And like that attaches you to a workspace in System Initiative, and it's got the MCP server already configured. You could do all of that yourself. It's no secret that that's what we're doing.
No, I get that. I mean, that's what I think is funny is how simple that is, really.
It's so simple.
So simple, right?
And it works so good. And so, and it's way better than being like, install the custom System Initiative agent. And you're like, oh man, but it can't write plans like Claude does. You're like, no, just put it in plan mode and have it go look at your infrastructure and have it spend credits doing deep thinking. And it like does deep thinking. Turns out it's incredible at it. So like, that's not my value, my value is the thing that is what it's going to execute on the other side. So then there's really 3 ways you interact with it. So one is through the agent. 2 is through a web UI because you want to understand what the agent has done and you want to be able to visualize it, or you want to be able to visualize your own stuff. So, ubiquitous search, mapping. So there's still a visual component, but what it's doing is drawing you a map as opposed to letting you sort of build a map yourself through composition. And then the third is a public API where you're driving that data model through what looks like just very traditional software development API calls. And so when you think about, and then you use all 3 of those modes in different ways. So like in a CD pipeline, you would, you'd be using the public API to do promotion, right? To basically say, hey, take in the data about the build that I just did and then call into System Initiative to change some infrastructure. You'd be using the agent loop to do like that policy bot that I talked about, where you're just like, hey, just call the agent, have the agent do it, and it'll go search for the right thing and then do the analysis and then write me a report. You're using the web UI to understand like what the state of the infrastructure is, or to troubleshoot problems, or to review the work that's happening elsewhere, other people's work. So those are the sort of 3 ways. And I think that is going to be a model that more people start to accept, is that like, as these agents come online and we're doing more and more with them, what we need are systems that allow us to interact at different modes of different levels of fidelity, where like, I don't want to have to do all of my API calls through the agent because that's annoying, because I know what I want to do. So if I know what I want to do, just let me call the API like a normal person, like, because that's good and great. And who doesn't love a good API? And then, but I think things are going to, in general, become more multiplayer in that way.
Have you considered that you're the Gosh, I'm just thinking about, I'm zooming out. So follow me with this because I'm trying to piece together some insights that I'm just kind of getting real time. And I got a good friend who's building some on-prem stuff. So I'm like knee deep with my friend who's building out some cool private cloud stuff. And I'm thinking about those folks who want to migrate away from the cloud. Maybe they might be an Oxide customer. Maybe that they're not going to be for a while, but they definitely have their own hardware. But what they don't often have is the cloud operating system, which I believe System Initiative could be, because you need this connective tissue on top of disparate hardware with ideas in orchestration. And largely that's been, infrastructure as code, hard to automate, Terraform, wars, licensing, all the things.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, have you considered that System Initiative is or can be that cloud operating system for everybody, put it on top of anything, whether it's you choose public cloud or you choose private and on-prem instantiation? Like, is that what you're going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I mean, and that's why the design is generic, right? That's why you can create your own components. That's why you can program it from the agent. That's why you can create, if you have your own applications deployed on-prem, they probably have their own APIs. They have their own CLIs. Like, you're going to write custom functions that go and interact with those parts of the system. And that's how it's going to work. And what's different is the way you think about the layering. So, we've had to build a lot of abstractions in order to try to make things good enough for people that it turns out when the agents are in the loop, you can remove.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of layers here where, like, when you think about what the interaction model looks like, you might be able to remove some of those intermediate layers because they're actually in the way now. Like, you can orchestrate a lot more, like System Initiative's models are like 1-to-1 to the cloud provider, which is crazy. Like, you're like, oh, I want to deploy a load balancer in AWS. That's not like one object. It's like 6 objects. You got to be like, oh, well, what's the listener? And then what's the target group? And then, oh, is it going to talk to this thing? And what are the subnets going to talk to? Like, it's crazy verbose. And so, the move in programmer land would have been to build an abstraction, right? That's like, oh, here's a simplified load balancer abstraction. So I don't have to think about those 6 components. But with an LLM, you don't care. You're just like, make me a load balancer. And it's like, sure, he'll go poop out the 6. And then you can look at him and you're like, oh, yep, those are the 6 I wanted. I don't need the higher level abstraction anymore, because the higher level abstraction was me just saying load balancer, please. Like, I don't need an intermediate layer.
Yeah.
So even when we think about it as like the cloud operating system or whatever, like, it breaks your brain in half because you're like, well, yeah. But what's the interface? I mean, it's probably just saying, could you deploy my application onto this hardware, please? And then it's like, sure, like the low level details are actually the thing you need. You don't need the middle layer at all. And we're still exploring the repercussions of that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where that goes or how that ends, but when I talk about it being like open field running and how much opportunity there is to build, that's what I mean. Like, it's the more you open your mind up to what's possible, the more you're like, oh yeah, actually, like, it could be like a lot different than it is now, because there's things that you just wouldn't do as a person that you're happy to let the agent do because you're just babysitting it. You don't mind that it had to go run off and do those 6 things. It knew what to do.
Do you support on-prem currently? I know you mentioned AWS, GCP.
Yeah.
Like custom hardware. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, we're nowhere yet. But what we do is support your ability to build your own models. So like so if you have stuff you want to drive with System Initiative and you like have a specification, what you would do is just create the models and feed it. But we'll start, like, it's an obvious thing that is, as we add more coverage, the system gets more powerful. So like, we do right now, like, architecture migration inside AWS, where it's like, hey, I want to move to Graviton. So analyze my infrastructure, make me a plan for moving to Graviton, like, show me what I would need to do, then analyze my code base to see if there's anything in the code base that makes it so I can't move to Graviton. Like that loop, like, we can do that loop for you right now. And it's very cool. Once multiple cloud support comes more online in System Initiative, which is coming quickly, like, that stuff's just going to work between like Azure and AWS. And, it's not going to move your application. It's not magic. It's not going to like, but if somebody needed it to, suddenly you're like, well, the agent is glue. So how's your application work? You know, maybe write a little bit of glue that knows how to do that orchestration, that knows how to like take the database backup out of Azure and then load it into AWS and then run that script. And then, you know, what you wouldn't have to do in the middle was all the work to be like, well, how do I map the instance sizes for my Cosmos DB to Dynamo? You'll just be like, it'll just like, it's going to get that right on the first crack, you know? And it's going to get it right like 100% of the time. So that kind of mobility, like it's just going to keep compounding, because then we're going to be like, well, sure, we'll do VMware. Everybody wants to get off VMware. And so, okay, once you have a VMware target and you have a whatever else target, like that migration story is the same. You're just like, well, okay, the raw infrastructure part's pretty easy. The hard part now isn't how do I build the infrastructure declarations, right? It's how do I move my app? Like, which was always the hard part. Like the sticky wicket was always like, what's the actual application requirements as it migrates? But in those stories, that's the plan, right?
Is that, I know I'm asking one more time about this on-prem situation, but how important is it to you to get there?
It's pretty important.
I feel like it's becoming burgeoning. Like it's new, right?
Yeah.
This new own your own cloud kind of situation is newer in like the last 2 years, but there's a significant uptick in the desire. We just had an outage. We just talked about that, right?
Yeah, we'll probably start with Oxide and OpenStack, and then you start to move from there, right? So like, you know, but once people start to adopt in a bigger way, then they start to bring them, you know, like different, like if you have the API that you want, like one of the things that's true in System Initiative right now is like, we're still in the part where we're writing like core documentation. We're just trying to catch up with like all the things it can do. But there's nothing stopping anyone right now from being like, hey, I have an API spec for this thing I run on-prem. Like take that API spec, build models in System Initiative, and away you go. Like go do it. And it would just work. Like there's no magic to it.
Gotcha. A lot of fun stuff, man.
So fun.
A lot of fun stuff. Are you growing as a part of this? Like, do you need more babysitters, more toll booth orchestrators, more directors?
I don't need any, like in terms of employees.
Yeah.
No, I'm good right this second. Like what I need to do right this second is bring my product to market and get more people to understand what we've done and turn that crank faster. And more employees like would be helpful, but like at some point the thing you're doing is getting the feedback loops moving that get you to the spot where you're like, okay, like now it's clear what to do. And like, you know, today I have staff, I could put more people to work, but what I need more of is people trying System Initiative and being like, oh yeah, this worked for me. Oh, this didn't work for me. Oh, this is what I really want to do. Oh, can I contribute this thing? Oh, I really want to make, you know, I really need to make models for this thing that I do. Can I do that? And you're like, yes, absolutely. Here's how you go do that. And so today, that's the game that's the most important thing in our business is just finding those people and helping them win and getting them successful. And that naturally will lead me to needing more employees to work on the software. But today, like I don't need more employees to work on the software. I need more people to use it to tell me like where we need to go.
Yeah. What is it like to go to market today in 2025?
Brutal.
Like what's the hard parts about going to market?
Yeah, it's weird, right? So I can't speak for anybody but myself. So I would say in infrastructure, what's weird today is that we spent a lot of time teaching the market how to do the last generation of tools because we thought that was the best we could do. And we did a really good job. So, you know, I'm proud of the work that we did to build DevOps and to think about infrastructure as code and sort of all of those paradigms. The amount of AI noise has made any AI go to market really tricky because, you know, people are just tired of somebody telling them, hey, this AI thing's really cool. It's going to change everything. And you're like, not in my life. You know, I'm sitting over here doing what I do. Like all it did was lie to me this afternoon. I gave it a try. It didn't work. I'm over it. And so, you know, part of the challenge is just that practitioner challenge of talking to people and being humble enough in the face of their incredulity to sort of stay engaged and be like, oh, yep, I understand your incredulity. Like, I know why that's how I know why you're saying what you're saying. Together, I'm going to show you that it can be different, and then we're going to get there, you know? And so that's interesting because in my career, you know, building configuration management or infrastructure as code or the DevOps movement, like it was coming up. There were people that rejected those things. You know, there were people who looked at Chef or configuration management and they were like, never for me, snake oil salesman. But it was pretty rare. And there certainly wasn't like an overarching technology story that we were a part of, where like earlier in this podcast, we had a serious conversation about whether it was a bubble and we were, you know, whether the whole thing was snake oil. And it was just like, so like that as a background noise when you're trying to go to market sucks. You know, like that's no fun at all because it's really difficult to cut through that noise and be like, hey, no, this is like real practical, valuable, useful stuff, because people's reaction to it is just like, it couldn't possibly be because it's the 15th AI pitch they heard this week. And, you know, 14 of 15 were bad. I think the other is that on the flip side, the enterprise sell way better. I've never been as smooth as it feels right now. So like take the same technology, the same things. I show it to like a CTO at a global 3,000 company, and they have an existential crisis about what it means. You know, they're like, oh no, like, and they get it like immediately. And so it's very strange.
What do you mean by oh no? What do they mean by oh no?
Like the implications are massive organizationally. It's like, oh, like this is the way our technology will work now. And I know a little about how my organization works today, and the gap between what we will be able to do, what we can do now, and where we were is so big that like they're like, I have to move, you know, like I have to do this because if I don't, I'll be left behind. And also the organizational challenge of moving all those people to this new way of working, understand what the technology is, figure out how it goes. Like that's a daunting task. So, but the reception,
I quit. I'm going to the beach. Okay.
Yeah, a little.
Great
right?
idea.
That's a real choice. And this happened in the DevOps movement too. There were people who were like I had meetings where we got to the end and they were like, this is cool software. We should absolutely buy it, but I retire next year. And I'm not taking on like
I'm
a
not
transformation.
The one to do that journey. Yeah.
I'm not taking on a transformation journey in 2005, you know? That's not for me.
Yeah.
And I think what we see now is, you know, the enterprise leaders, the technology leaders, practitioners who've been around a long time, you know, like the old heads, they tend to get it and they tend to snap in pretty quick. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. Ooh, you know, they got to shake it out a little. And
to get ready for a run. Like I'm going to, tomorrow.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, I'm not prepared.
And where it's, and you're like, oh, I haven't been working out and I need to, you know, like it's sort of that vibe, which is strange for me. Because in my career, usually it's the opposite. Usually the things I build, it's the practitioners who pick them up and are like, this thing's amazing. And then they go convince their bosses. And we're having this opposite motion where it's like, oh, it's actually the top down. It's that the top down then connects to those people. Then the skeptics show up and then they try it and they're like, oh, I'm not a skeptic anymore because I tried it. You know, we had somebody, for example, in a global, one of those like global 3,000 sort of motions where they turned the system on, they hooked up the agent, they asked it to go build some infrastructure for them. And they were like, hey, now what I want to do is like, do it again. I want to repeat it. And I was like, well, just tell it that you want to repeat it. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, just say, do it again, only in another region. And then it did. And they were like, oh, you know, and they're like, oh, you know, because we spent a lot of time being like, oh, what I should do is build an abstraction, you know, where if I want to deploy my app in multiple regions, I gotta bundle it up in a little thing. I got to put a Helm chart around it and I got to put some variables at the top and like, oh, you don't have to anymore. You could just say, do it again. And it would do it again. And like, that doesn't mean that that's the structure we'll have in the end, you know, but it's if you're an executive and you're listening to your team and you're watching your velocity and you're thinking about how the organization works, that story really hits hard because you're like, yeah, okay, that's better, you know, like that would be dramatic. And so yeah, what we're seeing is the top down motion is working better, and the grounds up one, like I got work to do. Like I'm like, all I'm doing is making practical examples and writing documentation and like doing as much work as I can to just describe the details of like, here's how this works. Here's the way AI works. Here's how it practically comes together. Here's why, you know, here's what those shapes look like. And it's just, we're just going to have to do that work, you know, not just for us, but like for the industry at large. Cause it's, we have to turn it into practical technology or we'll have missed a real opportunity to move things forward. And right now it's largely not practical, right? It's still people talking theoretical.
Yeah. It sounds like your go-to-market strategy needs to be top down. If it's not already, Adam, is it top down?
It's pretty top down.
Okay.
And like, but it's weird that it's top down for me. You know, once again, back to being transparent. Like I had an existential crisis and I, you know, had to pull out my prayer beads or whatever. Like it's not, you know, like I wasn't expecting top down. And like, I'm happy that top down is there. Top down's always part of your strategy. Anybody who tells you that their strategy is bottoms up and never top down, but they sell into the like large enterprises is a fool. Like large enterprise selling is always top down in the end. So like, I'm not upset that it's top down, but I get a lot of validation from practitioners, you know? So back to humility. You're like, oh, I'd like it more if my friends thought it was cool.
What's go one more layer deeper here. What's sales like for you then? Can we talk about sales? Do you mind if
I'm not going to talk about numbers or customers, but yeah, I'll talk about sales.
You don't have to say numbers.
As a concept.
I'd say, you know, how does your sales organization work, basically? How does a lead come in? Do you go out and get those things?
Yeah. Like we're early enough stage that like, and when you're figuring out the go-to-market, when you're figuring out like, what do we have and how do you explain it to people and how does that connect? Like you don't have a sales organization in the middle because your sales organization needs to be enabled. They need to be given a playbook. They need to be given messaging. They need to like, and then the great salespeople will take that playbook and rip it up, but they need to have one to rip up, you know? And we're at the stage where both the market at large and our company, like we're writing the playbook as we go, you know, we're like, ooh, does that work? Oh, it turns out top down works better. Great. Let's do more top down, you know? And like, that's the stage of sort of selling that you're in is just like, is you're learning about the motion while you're running the motion, which then eventually gives you enough certainty where you're like, oh, this is repeatable. And now I can grow a sales force. But a great way to kill a startup is to hire sales reps because you have a sales problem and then like watch them not be able to go to work, you know, like they can't do it because you gotta tell them what to do.
Do you have no sales then? Sales people, no sales folks? Like
I'm blessed enough to have co-founders who like have been here the whole time that like, and I'm pretty good at selling, like not to toot my own horn, but I'm not a bad sales rep. You know, so like largely a lot of that expertise is in house, so we can sort of hold that out a little longer than other people might. But it's really just, you know, once you know that motion is there and you understand it and you get a little bit more repetition under your belt and you're clear about where the angles are, like then you go hire sales reps. I think one of the things that's happening in AI is that like it can really cause a lot of hypergrowth if the messaging connects to practitioners in a way, or if it connects to its market in a way, like it can drive a lot of motion. So like, we'll see what happens, but
always fun going deep. This was a fun one. I really enjoyed this.
I hope so.
It was dope, man. I dug it.
I always hope I'm not boring, you know? I never want to come and be like, hang out with me for
boring.
2 hours while I
don't
talk about sales.
Never boring.
Well, just the end cap. That's more that was my fodder. If no one else cared about that last 5-ish, 8-ish minutes.
I mean, look, if you're a startup founder or you're trying to go to market in this space, I can tell you for sure what you should be doing right now is you should be in every single deal for a long time. because you need that product learning and you need the deal flow learning, and you like the only way to get it is to be there. And as soon as you put someone in between you and the deal flow, like it's like you're trying to understand the world through a pillow, you know?
Yeah.
Like you need the fire hose, you know?
Do you actually give it a name in like founder-led sales? Is that what you call it? Or do you just...
I mean, people
just
give
fly?
it names. Yeah, people give it names, but like, I don't know. I just think of it as like, as a leader and as a product person and as a CEO, like I don't know how to do it differently. And I've had the privilege of working for truly great salespeople. Like Barry Christ, who was the CEO of Chef for a very long time, is a world-class sales guy. One of the very first things he did at Chef was watch me try to do sales. And then he was like, that was great. I'm going to do it better tomorrow. And then he did, you know, he just showed, he was like, I'm going to rewrite the pitch. Trust me. And I was like, great, I'll follow you. And he did. And it was incredible. And it changed the trajectory of that company. It was amazing, you know? And like, you know, good sales guy, do not underestimate it. But that's because I knew what it was. You know, that worked because Barry listened to me and he was like, oh, Adam, I see what you're saying. I see how this goes. Here's how we could change the way we're saying it. You know, he didn't change any of the details about what I was saying, but he changed how he was saying it, what the layout was, the packaging, sort of how it all came together, you know? And like, but if you don't know those things, you know, if you can't do the first part, which is explain it to a sales guy and be like, here's how we talk about it, and here's why it matters, and here's what people value, and here's what their response is. And the best way to learn that is to just be in the trenches with people, you know, like if you're listening and you have an infrastructure problem, you know, like right this second is the window where I will come sit in your house and build infrastructure with you. And like, you don't have to pay me money to do it. I'll just do it. I'll just come and it'll be awesome. Like we get on planes, we go wherever.
So Adam, what do you know about Boot C? I'm just kidding.
I don't know a lot about it, but I'll go because that's the stage you're in. That's how you learn to sell. You know, you don't learn to sell things by staying at home. You learn to sell by going out into the world and like make it happen.
So what you're saying is if there is an opportunity, you will literally fly to them, sit hand in hand with them and show them system initiative in their world or how.
Yeah. I will literally come to you and I will help you automate your infrastructure with system initiative because I want to learn what it's like to do it from your eyes. And that's how you learn to sell the software, right? You don't sell software by putting out blog posts and being like, I hope you read it and figure it out. Like maybe, but like the actual way you do it is being like, oh yeah, you have a problem. Amazing. I'm fascinated by you and your problem and I cannot wait to help you solve it. And like, let's solve that problem. And then you do that enough. And next thing you know, you've written enough blog posts about solving people's actual problems and talked about it on LinkedIn enough that people are like, oh, I bet this thing would solve my problem, you know? And next thing you know, it does. And, but that happens because you get on planes. It happens because you like talk to everyone. It happens because you know, in the early days of Chef, I solved people's puppet problems, you know, like they'd come to me and be like, oh, I have this puppet infrastructure thing. And it's like, this thing's biting me. And I'm like, oh, I had that problem. That's why I wrote Chef, but here's how I fixed it before I wrote Chef. And, you know, spent a couple hours just hanging out, fixing someone's puppet. And like, you know, cause that's how you build community. That's how you get people to care, you know? Yeah.
You flying lots then? You on the plane like once a week?
Yeah. I mean, I'm flying.
When's your flight today? Are you flying today?
I'm not flying today. And a lot of people, weirdly enough, don't want you to fly anymore.
Yeah. They're like, nah, stay there.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know, man. That's weird. The pandemic happened, you know, once again, old guy, maybe we just do it on Zoom, which is fine.
I like face-to-face person.
I'm happy to do it on Zoom too.
It just hits different on Zoom. It's good. Yeah. I do all my sales for us via Zoom. I fly nowhere and we don't have a bad job at sales, but
like, you know, if you could run a couple of weeks, you know, I think there's no question to me what's better if what you're doing is figuring out how to do complex infrastructure automation or complex sales. Like, you know, the time I spent sitting at Meta when they were Facebook, like just with them automating data centers, like that was invaluable, you know, and it paid dividends in that product for years. And, you know, you can't get that by from a sales call. You know, I can't get that by being like, well, yeah, you should definitely try Chef. You know, I'm not going to come help you. I don't want to actually be with you. Like, no, this is what I do for a living. I love this. You know, I love infrastructure. Like all of those moments, it's not like a chore to have to fly somewhere. and hang out and automate some infrastructure, like that's a blessing, because you're like, yeah, I get to see this real gnarly problem. I get to see real people like using the software, and you learn so much about how to sell it, about how it works, about their environment, about what people need, and there's no real replacement for it. And Zoom, you can get some of it, but it's a lot harder, because it's just harder to get people to open up, like when you're in person, you can be like, you can be fun, you can crack a joke.
It's hard to be fun on Zoom.
It's hard to be fun on Zoom.
It is.
Even on Zoom, like people come intended to be allowable to be distracted, meaning this is a call where I can be rude,
right?
And it's okay. Like I can check Slack, I can check email, I can look at my phone while on a Zoom, but in face to face in IRL, it's that's harder. Not a cool thing to do, right? And you generally don't do that. When
you go sit in a conference room with people and run a project for a week or two, like where it's all dedicated to their point of view and all dedicated to their problem, like that's the greatest. That's the funnest thing. And like, I love doing that. So yeah, if you're listening and you're like, ooh, I'd love to do that, like Adam at systeminit.com. Let's go.
But he's not hiring. Okay. He's not hiring.
I'm not hiring, but I am going to come fix your infrastructure for you.
Okay. Gotcha. I like
that. A better deal.
All right. If you got infrastructure problems, I feel bad for you, son, but call Adam and he'll take care of you.
Exactly. Precisely.
There you go. All right.
Good stuff, Adam. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always my pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Stay cool. Be awesome. It was fun.
Super fun.